I hate this fucking song. I hate this song so much, but the extra brings it. Oh. I am swinging from a 7-story window, throwing parties in a 10-by-7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, 'cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till my liver turns blue. Sha-da-da, sha-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, 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 I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. Singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Fuck.
All right, put down your pens, put down your pencils, step away from the keyboards, and settle in for this week's episode of The Writer's Block, a Muddied Waters Media production. First and foremost, allow me to thank Grassroots Kava House for the kava that I drink on this and every episode of The Writer's Block, and allow me to thank the Narcissist Cookbook for the song that I play at the beginning. They give me 2 tops. That's just a waste of plastic. For the song that I play at the beginning and the end of every episode. And also to my parents. How do I forget my parents? To my parents for giving birth to me, because without them, none of this is possible. To all above Bula Vanaka. My guest today is an awful human being. Just terrible, terrible person. He is the host of the Remso Martinez Experience. He is the author of the book Stay Away from the Libertarians, which I have a copy of right here, available, I believe, on Amazon. We'll be able to ask him that in just a second. And the author of the upcoming book, How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Mr. Remso Martinez. Remso, how you doing?
Matt, I am doing great, and it's great to be here. And I definitely want to say that I was praying for your recovery after I found out that you had a hand injury that you obtained at the recent Marco Rubio foam party. So,
oh, that's good. Yeah, no, I do have a hand injury. I did what is commonly known as the avocado injury. And
if you tried to kill yourself, that's the wrong way to do it.
I know, yeah, definitely not the right way to do it. If I want to completely ruin my writing career forever, do what I did today and make it so that finger will no longer work. Yeah, I was prying something open with a sharp knife, and it slipped and went right into the palm of my hand, and blood started going everywhere. It was awful. First and
That's what all people that survive a suicide attempt say.
Yeah.
Okay. Please continue.
First and foremost, it's about time that the Muddied Waters Media and the Remso Martinez Experience just brought an end to this embittered battle we've been having, I think, for 3 days.
What battle do you speak of? I just remember a whole bunch of shit talk from one end and a whole lot of truth on the other. But I'm willing to accept your apology right now.
No, I mean, you're the one that was on Twitter. And you know what? We didn't even care about the fact that you were calling us dumb. We didn't care. We didn't care that you called us stupid. But you called us ugly. And that's just not even close to accurate.
Matt, my brother, you have what we call in the industry a face for radio. Stick to your zone, and you'll be perfectly fine. But I made you better people as a result. I gave you so much free publicity. So, really, you're welcome.
Spike is saying,
and what else?
Spike is, well, I've got the comments going on my other computer here, and Spike is saying he has forgiven Remso for his blatant anti-Semitism and inability to see his beauty.
Listen, Spike, no Jews allowed on this chat. I made that very clear to Matt beforehand.
Yeah, you're worried about what we were saying beforehand coming out.
This is the one comment that
yeah. Instead, you make a joke about saying no Jews on the chat. Awesome. Yeah, that's so much better than suck a dick, eat ass, and sell drugs.
No, it's eat ass, suck a dick, and sell drugs.
Yeah, my bad.
That's what Gandhi said.
Those are the true words of Gandhi and or Yoda. Who is essentially the same being.
Basically.
Right. So you and I met at YowCon. Great while ago. Back September-ish? August? I don't know. Last summer. Somewhere right around that time.
Time is going forward and backwards, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
That's what I told my history teacher all those years ago in high school, and I didn't want to take a quiz. I'm like, listen, it doesn't matter. The Civil War could happen tomorrow.
And how did that go?
It didn't go well.
I didn't think so.
No.
I one time told a history teacher. Well, it wasn't a history teacher. It was a English teacher. I said, I showed up late to class, and she goes, "You're late." And I said, "Nope. God created the universe right now, and everything before this moment is just a fabricated memory."
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you just do that off the cuff?
Off the cuff.
Shit. What'd she do after that?
She laughed and said, "I can't actually prove you wrong."
Respect.
I know. I couldn't believe it worked.
Inshallah.
Yeah, I could not believe that worked, but I was completely happy that it did.
I'm happy for you, and I wasn't even there.
I have used that excuse multiple times since then. It has worked once.
That's all it needed to.
It has gotten a few laughs, but I have gotten in trouble every other time.
Well,
What are you gonna do?
You break it once, you can't keep breaking it.
That's true. White people. Getting all upset over time. Which I do all the time.
I have no response for that. Okay, you guys ruin everything. Do you want a sympathy? Oh, no. From me? No.
No, I don't. No. I don't need it. So, last time you were on the show, you came on, we were talking about your book, Stay Away from the Libertarians, in which I was like, I really like your cover, and you told me that it was done by a fine gentleman off of Fiverr.
Essentially, it was actually a Bulgarian woman from 99designs.com, but I mean, who really cares about people from outside America?
Yeah, they don't matter. Man, this show, I'm going to get quoted on this show so much, I already know it.
Did you make disparaging comments about the Jews?
No, not yet.
No, but I'm going to have nightmares about this.
And nor would I, because Spike Cohen is a wonderful individual and a true friend.
God bless you, Spike. Your posts make me laugh so much during the day. Each time I almost cut my hand trying to, to take apart an avocado.
Right.
And not end my life.
Yeah, I'm going to end up with gangrene, lose my hand. It's going to spread to my heart. I'm going to die in the middle of the night. And I didn't go to the doctor because I wanted to make sure I was here for this interview because I did
don't you put that shit on me.
I did not want to be disrespectful.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that evil on me.
My parents are texting me being like, did you at least get a tetanus shot? I'm like, no, I had to be with Remso.
I don't want autism from a tetanus shot. Just saying Matt alone is going to get at least 7 Facebook blogger moms. Actually,
it's not from tetanus shots. It's from vaccines for HPV. Maybe. I don't know. But
they'll let us know.
They will definitely let us know. But I don't believe that you and I actually discussed how you got to become a libertarian-leaning person when you were last on the show. What was your journey? What was your personal journey from birth to sitting here on my show having to answer that question?
I was bitten by a radioactive libertarian.
That's actually the least surprising answer you could have given.
It's the most plausible one, too. It makes more and more sense every day.
Right.
But, for a quick recap, I was Mitt Romney's worst volunteer. Like, the worst person that could have ever worked for a campaign in 2012. I needed some community service hours, and I was a little bit interested in politics, so I thought I'd go ahead and volunteer for Mitt Romney. I was a big Republican at the time.
What kind of community service hours were these? Were these court-ordered, or were these...
It was in high school because I'm 12. So I went ahead and thought, hey, I could do both and knock it out. But before I could knock on one door, make a phone call, or send out a single letter asking for a donation for the local Romney campaign, I ghosted them because I was paying a lot more attention to things going on. And I realized that the things that mattered to me, free markets, constitutionalism, individual liberty, were not necessarily being echoed by the Romney campaign at all. And, essentially he was just a white, boring Obama. So I went ahead and I ghosted them. A few months later, Mitt Romney lost. And at that point I was like, oh, well, maybe all those people are going to go home and cry now. Maybe I can actually get some footing somewhere. So somebody at my school started a young conservatives club. There were a ton of people that showed up at the first meeting. There were about 60 people, and I was running for president with a good friend of mine, Zed Sheikh, and we were basically running a very Tea Party-oriented campaign, but we ended up losing by about 6 votes to a guy who not only said that everything we were saying was crap, but he was also the current secretary for the school's Young Democrats chapter.
Yeah.
And the reason why he won was because everyone said, Remso, all your stuff is great, but obviously the country doesn't care about any of this crap. We just want to win elections. So that way, maybe we could be like the rest of the country. So I went home, I cried. I didn't talk to people for about a week. And I just went ahead and started Googling my ideas, much like Justin Amash did. And I ended up finding all these guys like von Mises and Hayek. And I was like, who are all these Australian dudes? And finally figured out they were Austrian, and my life has been weird ever since.
Yeah, I believe that was chapter 2 of this book, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I was like...
folks, free preview. I'm a man of the people.
Yeah. I was like, I feel as though I've read that. I knew that story. But yeah. So when you and I met at the Young Americans for Liberty conference in D.C., Reston, let's be honest. Let's not lie to the people.
I've been telling people I live in DC for 10 years, and only people from actual DC call me out on it.
No, I get that because I grew up in DC.
It's a struggle.
No, I didn't. I grew up in Northern Virginia. But
People's Republic.
That's right, the People's Republic of Virginia. But yeah, we met at the YALCON there, and the very first thing you said to me was, "Hey, man, you want a beer?" And unbeknownst,
true story.
Yeah, true story. Offered me a beer before he knew me, which, you know what? Respect. I do respect that.
I'm a gentleman. I'm a Southern gentleman.
That's true. He may not have known that I was a recovering alcoholic, but I'm not going
to. But then you informed me of that.
Yes.
To which I replied, "Do you want it or not?"
Also true. And I went, no, I'm good. I mean, no, I do, but I'm good.
And I'm standing there like, I'm confused.
And that's how I live most of my life. And
great origin stories.
Oh yeah, the friendship for the ages. But yeah, we got off to a great conversation. You were manning the booth for Gun Owners of America, and sure. And when I brought you on, I didn't know you had written a book. But when I said, "Hey, do you want to come on the show?" I thought you were going to come on to talk about like Gun Owners of America. And then you said, "Yeah, do you want me to send you a copy of my book?" And I went, "Sure." And then you sent me a
Well, I wanted you to talk about guns, and now you just want to make it all about yourself, motherfucker.
Right. I mean, but I understand it. As a narcissist, I get it. But now you have this new book coming out, which I was able to read some of, because I told you last time I'm not a great reader, which is weird since I write. But the book, How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship, which the first 4 chapters are hilarious and need some editing because you sent me the first draft and I understand that. But they're hilarious and they're really well, like the story I really like, and soon I will get past the 4th chapter. But how did you get started on this one?
This was a lot more of a journey than the first book was, because I told you this on the last time we spoke. The book initially was not going to be a memoir. It was initially going to be, and it's not, I don't even really like it when people call it a memoir, because I'm really just using my own personal stories in order to elaborate and flesh out more complicated ideas. But essentially, the first book, the big challenge of that was just learning how to write a book.
Right.
It took me about a year and a half to write because I had been a blogger for a while, but when you're actually trying to write a full feature-length book, it's a lot more difficult. This time, it was a lot more of a creative challenge because the first book is nonfiction. This book is actually historical fiction. That's how it has to be categorized, even though the entire book there, it was a bit complicated. I equate it to either, people that like Jeff Shara from Gods and Generals and stuff, where you basically had to put fictitious elements in the book. And I say it's like that, but it's also kind of like The Greatest Showman, where most of the people are real, but a lot of the shit just never happened.
Right.
So I say it's in that fine line, because what you have in this book is you have 2 intertwining story arcs. One of them is purely fiction based in events that did happen, such as the Charlottesville riot and other situations. And a majority of the characters in there, except for some public figures, which if you saw their names are real, are fictitious. They're combinations, they're mixtures of people that I have encountered over the years. So you have that story arc, which takes place from 2016 to 2018. Then you have this other story arc, which kind of intertwines between the other story throughout the book, and it is purely nonfiction. It's based off actual historical accounts. I did about 6 months of research for this part, and it is about probably the most infamous villain of American history, especially from the 20th century, that we have ever seen, George Wallace. So essentially, you have the main character in the modern times, Art Brown, who's a little bit based off Art Bell, the former political radio host, and he eventually started doing sci-fi stuff. So I took the name in honor of him. He died about a year ago. So you have Art Brown, who's a political consultant, and he's basically dealing with a world in which the politics that he thinks are real and the way that America should be don't end up happening. And he starts seeing a world of corruption and debauchery and lies. And he starts to become complacent with that. He starts to just kind of accept it. So while that's going on and you're seeing Art's, story progress, you're also seeing it kind of intertwine with the actual career of George Wallace, which people know very little about. And initially, in the book, I was going to have a bunch of different politicians to show different examples, but I thought it would be better to show the entire life of an individual. When I think of your quintessential politician who had very good aspirations for people and ended up making terrible decisions in order to be politically expedient. George Wallace is definitely one of those folks, because what people don't know about him is he started off as a very, I'd say a very progressive Southern Democrat.
He started out as an anti-segregationalist.
That in 1958, when he first ran for governor in the Democratic primaries, he was endorsed by the NAACP.
Right.
And as a circuit judge in Alabama, he actually was in favor of, black lawyers almost as often as he was with white lawyers. And there's one story about a man named J.L. Chestnut, who was a black attorney. He was representing a peanut farmer at one point whose land was about to be forcibly taken and given to this one giant northern business. The Northerners' attorneys come in and they start referring to Mr. Chestnut as those people and that person, and why is he here and all this other stuff. And George Wallace actually loses his cool and he slams his gavel on the table and he's like, when you are in my court, you will call Mr. Chestnut or the plaintiff and nothing else, or I will go ahead and hold you in contempt of court. And J.L. Chestnut, he goes ahead and he says, there were some cases where I'd go in for a lawsuit and I'd request maybe $50 for my client, and George Wallace would give him $75. I mean, he was a fair judge. And in one of his only few televised commercials at the time, because television commercials for political campaigns are still very new, he said, listen, as a circuit judge, if I couldn't judge a white man and a black man equal in my court, I did not deserve to be a judge, and I don't deserve to be governor.
Right.
These are things that we would never, ever assume from the same man who's known throughout all of history, throughout the world, even, as the guy that said segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. But so, yeah. Also,
a lot of people don't realize he was elected in 62, I believe, 62 or 63. 63. Yeah. So yeah, he was elected in 1963. He was termed out, and he ran his wife in his stead in 1970 something.
1968.
1968. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then she acted as the governor, and then he came back and served as the governor after that. And in his last race, when in 1982, I believe, mm-hmm. He won with 98% of the black vote, I believe.
Absolutely. I mean, his whole life reads like something out of a Shakespearean tragedy to a large degree, because there's this really sad part that I discovered as I was researching him. After he got elected, this one black man from Montgomery who knew of him when he was a judge, he walked over to George Wallace, and George Wallace, out in public with people around him, he shook his hand, he asked him how his family was. They just had a regular conversation. And the guy looked at him, he's like, Governor, like, why are you talking about all this race stuff? You don't actually believe any of the stuff. And George Wallace looks at him and he's like, listen, I want to talk about how to put more money towards schools, build better roads, and bring home more jobs. But no one would listen to me unless I talked about the race stuff. And that's both very genuine of an answer, but that's also a very dick answer.
It's the Trumpian answer where Trump said, I'm not going to ruin the world economy over one journalist. Like, it's the exact same, like, you're going to get, it was the most blatant, honest answer you will ever get from a politician. And typically you don't get that. You get the dancing around. Both of those answers are the dead on truth. And you don't get that from politicians ever. But yeah, no, George Wallace has been I've been interested in him for quite some time. There's this band, the Drive-By Truckers. I don't know if you know who they are or not.
No.
Okay. They're a southern rock country band. And they have a album called Southern Rock Opera. And in one of them, the name of the song is Three Great Men from Alabama. And they talk about George Wallace through most of it. The other two guys is the football coach from Alabama, whose name I'm blanking.
Saban!
Not that
Roll
one.
Tide!
Not that one.
I lived in Alabama.
Yeah.
Denny Bryant?
Yeah. Denny
Yeah.
Bryant, and then I can't remember who the third person is. But they talk about those three guys, and then they talk about what happened with George Wallace. And they talk about how, he ran without, he ran on a non-segregationalist platform initially, and he lost, and then he adopted it so he could try to do other things. And then he said that later on in life, he said he regretted having done that. And when he won his final election in 1982 or 3 or whatever it was, he won with 90 something percent of the black vote in Alabama, which is just absolutely incredible for somebody who, like you said, they are known for segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Like it made it so easy to play the racism, with a Southern twang, was because of George Wallace. So he's been I've been interested in him ever since. The next song after that is George Wallace Goes to Hell, and the devil and him hang out, and it's a good song, but highly recommend it. So the book, How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship. I know that you've just done the first draft, and what I've read of it's really great. Jason Lyon, The Bearded Truth, if you don't know, he wants to know when that book is coming out.
That will be coming out in June 2020, just in time for the Democratic National Convention.
Oh, Jesus. I'll give you that. That's good. That's good marketing right there.
It was done intentionally because here's the beautiful thing, and I really do think that, and maybe I'm just being hard on myself because all authors are extremely brutal when it comes to their own self-criticism. But the first book, Stay Away from the Libertarians, which, I put my heart and work into, and it's my first book, so it'll always be my first love. But that's just a fun book, and maybe it'll entertain some people. But that's all it will probably ever be. It'll just be an entertaining book.
Right.
This one was actually put me on a bit of a spiritual journey, because here I am, I'm condensing events that I've been inspired by my time as a political consultant, which I did, and other stuff for over about 3-4 years, and other stories from people, which make up the fictional portion of the book that takes place now with the character Art Brown, who's a political consultant. And then, you have George Wallace, who was a real person. So it really forced me to confront certain things and really ask myself certain things, because as I was researching him and I was, writing his story, I did it as somewhat of an outside observer, especially as someone that, I lived in Alabama. I knew a little bit about him. I know people that worked for George Wallace's 1972 presidential campaign. I met them. So I'm dealing with real people who live. And it's incredibly sad, because each time you think you know something about him, you really don't. Each time you think you find something which is a really good redeeming factor as a human being, he does something terrible. But then after he does something horrendous, he does something good. And you're just like, what type of person is he? And then what you discover is he's a flawed man that had good intentions for a while, but he succumbed to the dark side when he just wanted to be successful in politics, and he just wanted to be the man in power. And he allowed that power to consume him. It resulted in some terrible things, which he was either directly or indirectly responsible for. And then what's the one thing that forces George Wallace, the fighting little judge from Alabama, to start to atone for his sins and start to refocus on his life once he discovers that he's not immortal and he's not invincible? He gets shot.
Yeah.
And, that's the story of George Wallace that I actually found most compelling. What happens to a man when he is physically and spiritually broken?
All right. I'm going to have to read more of your book. I ain't going to lie. So you and I are both writers. That's actually 50% of the reason that this show got its name. The other 50% being my last name.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. Weird. So weird. And Spike Cohen commented, he said, "It's not a memoir. I'm just telling stories about myself," which I think that. I feel as though pretty much all of us do that. Like all writers do that. Like
the only reason why I say it's not a memoir is because I feel if you're writing a memoir, you have to talk about an entire account of your life, and you have to include a lot of things. In the first book, I just talked about my life just dealing with libertarians, and just how I got from no one to being someone who's a bit of a. I wouldn't say I'm popular in the libertarian circle, but I am a public figure within the libertarian community.
right.
So,
I mean, you're not on Muddied Waters level yet, but I mean, you're.
No, I mean, I got to pace myself, you just got to pray and hope. But anyway, I mean, and for the record, for anyone that wants to write a book strictly about politics, which include themselves, I mean, the one thing that will bug you is that you will only be ever known by people that have read your book just for that.
Yep.
And to a certain degree, it is a bit annoying because for anyone that knows just a little ounce more about me, you understand that that's not my entire life. I don't just want to be defined as the libertarian guy. I don't deny it, but, there are other things in my life which I've done.
Right.
And there are other things in my life which I'm going to do. So that's just an advice for writers that want to write about themselves. Prepare for that.
So I write, I've got 2 books out. One's called Dear Jack, Diary of an Addict, which the diary entries in this book are my own diary entries, minus 1. There's one that's not. 2, the last one. Yeah, so there are two in there that are not my actual diary entries. The others are. And then the second one is called Can You Keep a Secret? And it's about somebody who's dealing with sex addiction and dissociative identity disorder.
That was an excellent book, by the way.
Oh, did you like that?
I got the digital copy, yeah.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. But both of those are based on true stories. They're based on my life. And people are like, do you just pick stuff from your life to write about? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. And they're like,
I think every author does that because I think it was Hemingway who just said, write about what you know.
Right. He also said, write drunk, edit sober. And
he also said all authors are great liars.
That's true. All of these are very true facts and great advice. Because if you're dating an author, you've made a mistake. Because they are making it up as they go along.
Prepare not to see them for extended portions of time, even though you might be in the same house as them.
Right. So when you're sitting down to write one of your novels, do you do do you set aside a certain time of day? Do you go into like a certain room, or is it just kind of like, I need to write this chapter right now, and you go and you do it?
I have my own space. So like, for example, like I've got furnished basement. I would typically go into my basement and I have a couch where I will just sit down and, or lay down. And I've got my actual desk where I've got, a thesaurus and I've got pens because I still I always have a pen in my hand. For example, I've got here's the legal pad from how to succeed in politics. It's just legal pads upon legal pads of shit because sometimes you don't just want to type it out. You need to just be in that, they call it the act of writing. You have to just immediately just push those words out of you.
Right.
So I do that. And typically it would be, I try and do 500 words because I don't know why 500, but 500 words just feels like my primer. If I could get 500 words out, everything else is just going to be a lot smoother. Even if not a lot of it is good and I end up redacting a lot of it, I'm still putting words out. So a good chunk of it's still going to be good. So I'd write early in the morning. I'd take a break during in the day. And then I would do the worst thing ever. I would basically write all night until I passed out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very unhealthy. And I know that this is something that all writers know, but no one ever says aloud. I do believe that if you're a person who feels compelled to write, not just someone that wants to write, but feel like writing is arduous, writing is a mental illness because you're compelled to do it. You feel guilty when you don't do it. And you only feel like you're truly ever expressing yourself in the written form.
Yeah.
And I do think it's a little bit, it's a little bit of an OCD factor because I feel like if I'm in the middle of writing something and I'm in the act of writing in which I'm just purely creative in that moment, if you interrupt me, it's going to be a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much, because so I can't write at home. I can't. I cannot sit in this room where I do everything else that I do at the house. Like I do everything here. You know what that means. And yeah. But I do everything else here, and except for writing, because these four walls, like I can't get creative enough when I'm sitting in here.
Do you feel like you're distracted?
Not here. It's that I am so not distracted. You
need something to stimulate you.
Right, exactly. So like I am that tool that sits at a coffee shop or whatever and types. Like
I have to do that. I'm a full-time writer. Right. I'm a copywriter. I do ad copy. I write articles. I do journalism. Like when it comes to that stuff, I have to leave the house. When I'm writing my book, I need to be as distraction free as possible. And I want to show off something real fast. Like this is 100% free product placement, but I hate writing on my laptop because I will get distracted by a YouTube video that's only 30 seconds long. In 6 hours, I will realize I didn't write anything because I was just watching videos on YouTube.
Get it? Yep.
But I actually bought this recently. It's called an Our House Free Write. It's basically an electronic typewriter with a very basic cherry switch keyboard and an e-ink screen. And it hooks up to Wi-Fi. Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, I've got the Quirky Writer S. Gives you the feel of old school typewriter. Gives you the feel.
There's something about that tactile experience that you just need, because I don't like the slim nature of I have a MacBook Air. There's something about this that just makes me feel like a real writer. But here's the thing: like I tell people, if you're not a full-time writer, if you're not a writing enthusiast, you shouldn't buy this, because essentially what this is just a super downgrade laptop. I need this because
it's a word processor. That's all it is.
That's basically it. That's basically it. Well, I mean, it's not even a word processor. You can't scroll up and down, so you have to go up by pages or just backspace the entire section. It won't tell you if you got anything wrong. But they did that on purpose. And it's actually a discipline that I have taken to my writing in general, where I'll actually disable the spell check when I'm initially writing, because what it forces you to do is mentally, it forces you to just push yourself forward and not think backwards. So that way you have, I'd rather delete a bunch of stuff than ever be at a loss for words. But also I hate, I use Grammarly, for example,
right?
Because my editors used to hate my work before it. But, with Grammarly, I found that, the AI behind Grammarly actually does change my writing.
Really?
It actually does change the tone of my writing. And what I hate is when I see it and I feel compelled to click on it and change it. It completely throws me off.
Right. No, I get that.
So when I finish my work on the free write, for example, it uploads to my G drive immediately, which is what I love about it. And I'll go in there, and when I edit, I found that I only have to edit once. There's just something about being in 100% distraction-free creative space that allows me to put out some of the best work I've done recently.
I use a program called Scrivener, and it's on my laptop, which is also a Mac, and then it also has a iPad app that comes along with it. Mm-hmm. And when I use it on my iPad, which I hook the iPad up to my Quirky Writer, it turns off everything. It turns off all distractions, minus my phone. So it's like I'm not getting the notifications. I'm not getting any of the notifications. No phone calls are coming through. Music will play through if I ask it to, but nothing else. And it wipes out everything else. It literally is just a scrolling single page that I'm sitting there typing on. And it gets rid of all other distractions. And then I have the sound of the coffee shop or, kava bar or wherever I happen to be at that moment. That's
wherever the hipsters play.
Right. Exactly. Wherever the jeans are too tight for the people who are wearing them. Spike says he has a machine that simulates picking up change off the ground, which is good because Spike threw his back out picking up foil off the ground. So it's a good thing he's got that now. But not having those distractions is what I need. The only problem with me doing it in public is apparently the international sign for, hey, I really want to talk to you, is earphones in, sitting at something typing. That is the international sign for, come over and talk to me because I really want to talk to you. Which it's not. And it's like, I'll be right in the middle of something good and somebody will come over. What's that you're working on? Nothing now.
Well, and here's the one thing I hate. Because they know what you're going to say. And then you just sound really douchey saying it like, I'm working on my book.
Yeah.
And then they're like
screenplay.
Yeah. I tolerate book people. I cannot stand screenplay people. I
am both.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Just a double whammy right there. But then they ask, what's it about?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to stab that person and hide the body. It ruins the whole process of being creative.
It really does. Yeah, like people come up and like when I was not Can You Keep a Secret, but the one that I just finished called Fireflies, which that one was the hardest book for me to write. I was writing it when I was at the darkest time in my life, outside of, recovering from drug use. I was I was depressed. I was down. I had been beaten like every which way. And I was writing this book about a guy who is trying to get off of drugs unsuccessfully. I'm just going to put that out there now because you find that out in chapter 1. But like it goes through him just getting abused. And like, it's all stories that happened to me. Like they are all true stories, slightly fictionalized, but just for the sake of better reading.
I mean, write what you know, because I mean, the problem that a lot of fiction writers have is when you're doing something which is outside of what you know, I think people can generally tell.
Right.
Like everything, like it could be the most it could be a story in space, set 1,000 years from now, but the problems your characters will have will be things that you can see as being real. Like real problems,
right.
Because the story itself never changes.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I want this book to be a book that both Republicans, libertarians, apolitical people, Democrats can read, because ultimately, it comes down to the biggest issue that I had to deal with. It's understanding your own ethical boundaries and whether or not you have the ability to forgive other people and yourself for things. And that's a very human story. So it could have been how to succeed in business and other forms of devil worship.
Right.
I mean, it could have been how to succeed in anything, because ultimately the problem the characters have is how much is too much.
Right.
How far is too far.
Right. Agreed. Like everybody's got to have their boundary lines, and it's whether or not you're willing to cross them. Which most of us, I find, the people who want to be that successful and don't really care about anything else are always going to be willing to cross them. Like there are certain things I won't change my writing. I won't. And because of that, I'll probably never be a New York Times #1 author. And I get that. But I get to tell the stories my way. Like with Can You Keep a Secret? A lot of people were put off, especially people that knew me. They were put off by the book because they thought that it was too graphic, that it was somewhat pornographic at points. And they were like, also, I hated picturing that face doing that, which I was like, you're welcome.
That was the point of the book, though.
Right, exactly.
No, like I'm on your side. Like sometimes, it's not a criticism. It's not a compliment. It's just what I feel is a fact about your book. The book was voyeuristic because that's what it was supposed to be. That's what the story was supposed to convey.
Right.
So, there were parts of it where I was like, well, shit. But then I was like, yeah, this kind of had to happen because this is the point of the book. It's supposed to be an experience. So, like, that's what made it unique reading it, because in a lot of ways it was also kind of like Albert Camus' The Stranger,
right?
Like, that's what it reminded me of, because, in that book, that's also like that. I didn't like that book because I didn't like the story, but the older I got, the more I respected the way it was written, because you were supposed to feel uncomfortable
The entire
because
book,
no one else had written something like that. Like, that guy was a sociopath.
Right.
You were supposed to feel like you were complicit.
Right.
And that's the one thing about your book. It felt like not only was it voyeuristic, but you were also complicit in the stuff that was going on.
And yeah, I mean, that wasn't an easy book to write either, because that is based on a relationship that I had.
Well, shit. Now it just makes everything creepier.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's the conversations that the main character has. I almost said that I have the conversations that the main character has with the female, with his girlfriend or whatever you want to call her, and her different identities. Some of those are real conversations that I had, and it was just like such a weird experience. And I was like, I have to put this down, and she's going to be real upset if she ever reads this.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, like, I originally for this book, it was just going to be like a tell-all about everything I dealt with in politics. So it was going to be written somewhat in the same way as Stay Away from the Libertarians. But 3 things happened. 1, I didn't want to get sued. 2, I did not, want to force myself to reflect and remember certain things that happened because, they're traumas. And 3rd, I didn't want to basically have it just be a garbage pile just for myself. I wanted it to ultimately be a good story. So having it be a linear story that intertwines with this real person, I think ultimately that was the best decision, because I think readers are going to have a better experience of that.
Right.
Especially since when it's fiction, there was stuff in there that I had to put in specifically just because I wanted it to also just be a good story. I put in love triangles. I put in death. I put in mystery. Like, I put in some things that I did just because that's what you want when you want to read a good novel. I'm very open about, what my 2 favorite writers of all time are Hunter S. Thompson and F. Scott Fitzgerald. And if you remember that Hunter S. Thompson's favorite author was F. Scott Fitzgerald, it really just comes down to F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Right.
What is the thing that the person desires? What does he see when he gets what he desires? And what is the cost? And then how do you live after you've paid it?
Right.
Gatsby dies. Nick Carraway, no one really cares what happens to Nick Carraway.
No, not even a little bit.
Because he was such a disposable aspect of it, but everything was written through his eyes. His cost was, I think actually Nick Carraway actually deserves more blame throughout the book than people give him. Than people don't give him. I actually think that he was complicit in a lot of the crazy stuff that happened because of his own inactions and his own cowardice. Like, I actually think that the character of Nick Carraway is a cowardly character.
Oh, absolutely.
But
he just wanted to be part of everything.
Yeah.
He just wanted to be involved in the situation, like in that lifestyle. And it's almost like what we were talking about with how to succeed in politics or other forms of devil worship. He was willing to just let anything go in order to be involved in it.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah. It's exactly like what you were talking. It's exactly the same sort of situation. And because he wanted to be part of that Gatsby group, because he wanted to be involved with Daisy and Gatsby and that whole party scene, he just kind of sat by and was like, whatever.
Yeah. And one thing that I hope readers will kind of enjoy is that I went balls to the walls on this character. His name is Satan Nixon.
Yep. Got to him.
He's Nixon and Satan.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of puts the devil worship angle in it. But, Satan Nixon is, he's that voice in the back of your head that's not necessarily telling you to do bad things, but he's confronting you with your own guilt. And
the way that you introduced that character is fantastic, by the way. That was awesome. I was reading it and I'm like, well, I'm scrolling. I'm scrolling and I'm reading it and I went, oh, that's good. That's good. Is that you, Satan? Satan, Nixon, Satan, whatever you want to call it. Oh my God, Remso. But yeah, no, that was like, it was a fantastic transit. Like, it was a fantastic introduction. And
thank you. I knew that if I introduced Satan, I would be compared to every other introduction of Satan in any story or film that's ever been done.
Right.
So, like, you know, one of my favorite movie scenes of the past year was actually in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where if you've seen there's a scene where the spider bites Miles, you know, in the area of the subway.
Right.
And it seems like it's about to be like that Peter Parker scene from the 2001 film where he's fainting and he feels like shit and everything. And Miles just goes, and he walks away. That was
kills it, blows it off, and just walks away.
That was so funny of a scene, because what we were expecting was like when every other person ever gets superpowers, they will always be measured to that scene from Spider-Man.
Right.
So I knew, it's like, wow, introducing this character, he's going to be compared to every other introduction of Satan. I might as well make it funny.
I don't know if you have noticed this or not, but there have been two people on Facebook, Spike Cohen and Shane Sweeney, who have been in an embittered battle as well over friend limits, over who has more Facebook friends. And Shane Sweeney commented, speaking of which, stay away from Spike Cohen. He's uncool. I, however, am awesome, and you should all friend me so I can beat him in this childish, friendless competition.
Whichever of them buys a copy of my next book will be my favorite.
There you go.
The person that buys it last will... I'll still have to be nice to them because they bought the book.
Because they bought the book.
Right. They bought the book, but they won't be my favorite.
Yeah, there are people who bought my book that I dislike with a passion. But I'm nice to them all the time. Oh, yeah,
because you just feel like, damn, market accountability. But yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad that you liked that part.
Yeah. So, since we're not just going to sit here and do like the writers, oh, look how great we are thing, everybody should go out there and buy our books, which everybody should go out and buy our books.
Obviously.
Both are available on Amazon. All of them are available on Amazon. Mine is How to Succeed in Politics, but that will be in June of next year.
June 2020.
June 2020. But let's talk about the big news of the day. Let's talk about Julian, Mr. Assange, Mr. WikiLeaks.
There's been a day that's been counting down for years, and it finally happened.
Right.
It came to our doorsteps, and we didn't even notice it.
Like, 100% we knew that this was eventually going to happen. There was no way that the Ecuadorian government was going to let him sit there
They
forever.
carried him out like a stuffed pig. It was really actually kind of funny, because they tossed him out.
Yeah, they were not happy with him. Like, I'm not going to say they weren't happy with him being there. I think they were more happy with the $4.2 billion that they got moments later. But not going to say those two things are related. But they're probably right. But yeah, they literally chuck him out the door. And he immediately gets arrested. And in Julian Assangeist way, he sits there and he winks his eye, gives a thumbs up. Yeah, basically does the Nixon piece, and
that was so epic. But what's more epic is the long ass wizard beard he grew and the man bun.
Right,
that was some strange stuff.
Yeah, the wizard beard I didn't really understand, and the man bun. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. He is an alleged rapist. I kind of can understand a man bun.
It makes a little bit of sense,
right? So, right now he's on his way to Sweden for
the sexual assault and rape accusations.
Right. So he's going to go there for the sexual assault and rape accusations. And if found guilty, will he still come to America?
Yes, because he would have to be extradited for the additional charges. So basically he would be serving his charges from, whatever happens with that case, but he would also have to come to the United States because we've also got charges on him.
Right. So once if he gets convicted, assuming he gets convicted, because I have a feeling that this is not going to be a fair trial. Anyway.
Here's the thing. I don't think a lot of people who say they want him to go to trial, I really don't think they want to, because what they're going to have to do is, this is actually a lot like the reason why Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was not tried, because what they would have ultimately had to do was Jefferson Davis, the person, would not be on trial. The constitutionalism and legality of separation would be on trial.
Right.
So they didn't want to accidentally validate that, yeah, the South was legally allowed to break off from the Union.
Right.
Secession. So ultimately, if Assange really does go to a public trial like this, they're not really putting him on trial for what he did or what he didn't do. They're really putting on trial whether or not it was legal for him to have shown the documents or not. That's ultimately what's going to come down to.
Which is, I mean, it's going to come down to the freedom of the press issue if he can get extradited to America. Personally, and this would not surprise me in conspiracy theories, whatever, he gets convicted of the rape, sexual assault in Sweden, and while he's in jail, he gets killed. So that way, they don't even have to worry about.
Or they give him like a life sentence for that, and that basically like kind of reneges on what he would have gotten elsewhere.
Right.
But it's not for the same charges, because ultimately they don't want to have to go deal with someone who's gonna basically show them up for what they did.
Right, because essentially, if we are going out and arresting somebody in England or in technically on Ecuador, yeah, Ecuador, on Ecuador property, what's to stop like somebody from China or Japan doing the exact same thing to an American journalist? Like, why wouldn't they be able to do that? Like, that is why I believe the ACLU actually came out and said that today.
Well, like, why didn't we go after anyone who killed Hassan Khashoggi?
Exactly, because we didn't want to mess up the global economy.
You know, it's so weird. I actually walked past the Saudi embassy today, and I looked at the bushes, and I had like this chill go up my spine, because I was like, a human being fertilized that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it really creeps me out.
When you said that, when you're like, I walked by the Saudi embassy today and I looked at the bushes, I literally, like, in my head, I pictured like Jeb and George. I was like, oh,
they were probably there.
I was
like,
hey, what were they doing there? And you could see them.
King,
That's weird.
what's face? I thought you said we was gonna party today. George, you know they invite us here for an actual meeting. No, they said to bring sombreros, margaritas, and, you know, we're going to have a quinceañera. Are you confusing the Saudi Arabians with the Mexicans, George? All the same. I love my brown brothers.
Is it Jeb's wife is Mexican.
Yeah.
They said we were going to have ourselves a quinceañera today. So that's actually one of my biggest concerns is like, okay, what kind of precedent on a global standard is this going to, are we setting here?
I don't think it's ever changed, because, you know, we've never liked journalists. Like, you know, there was the guy that I forget his name. I feel terrible. I think it was like Ramon Salazar or something. He was a Latino journalist in the 60s, 70s. He was basically like murdered by the LAPD. And it was, crap, I forgot his name. He's Dr. Gonzo in Fear and Loathing.
Oh, right.
The brown buffalo. I forgot his name. I feel terrible. He was Hunter S. Thompson's sidekick.
Right.
Like, you know, he was, you know, bringing this up to people. He's like, listen, they could kill lawyers. They could kill the press. Like, they can go after anybody. And even in 1968 at the Democratic National Convention, when the riots broke out in Chicago, like Hunter Thompson, he was afraid that because there were snipers on the roof, he was afraid that with all the beatings and stuff going on, they were going to start open firing. So he went to his hotel that was off the street from where the convention was being held, and there were cops there with, you know, riot gear and batons, and they're saying, oh, we got cordoned off the area. Hunter Thompson's like, no, listen, I'm staying in that room. And they're saying, you got to go, and they're trying to push him. He's like, no, I'm pressed. I have a press pass. That's my room. I'm spending like $100 a night there. And he luckily he had his motorcycle helmet on, because he had his motorcycle there. He had his motorcycle on. He didn't get time to take it off. And one of the cops actually beat him with the baton over his head. Then he was able to quickly rush to his room, but he gets to his room, and this is what his wife said. He's like, Hunter was horrified because they knew he was press. They saw his press pass and they didn't care. And if that's how you're willing to treat journalists, that's going to be bad long term. And his wife, his first wife, Sandy, she was basically like, he cried for weeks. And he was fearful. He cried for weeks.
Well, that's why he left the fear and the loathing in Las Vegas. I don't know. I one time wanted to do the Hunter S. Thompson breakfast, if you know what that is.
Well, damn.
Yeah. I thought about it one day just to see what that was like.
Are you so desperate for source material for your next book?
No, I had a crippling drug addiction, and I was just like, well, this sounds like that'd be a fun way to start the day.
He did that stuff just to operate.
Yeah. I would have done it more as a science experiment.
I was
to see if I could survive.
I will definitely say, like, I've definitely, like, for the first book, like, alcohol was definitely an influence in it. But I had just come out of neck surgery when I was dealing with the second book. I was dealing with neck surgery at the time, so I was on Percocet and a whole bunch of other stuff. And like it, I totally understand why some writers like they do some crazy things in order to get inspiration.
Right. No, I get it. Like going through when I wrote my first book, I was coming off of cocaine and heroin, and that was when I was writing that. But I had started drinking heavily, and when I wrote my second book, it was when I had stopped. Drinking. So, like, I was clear-headed as I could be while I was writing that book, and it was awful. And then when I wrote my third one, that's supposed to be coming out sometime next year, probably June of 2020, just to compete.
What? Running mates.
Remso Wright 2020. We can sell them as a bundle. But when I wrote that book, I had just gone through a breakup. I had just lost my job. Like, I was just in a dark, dark place. And I was like, let's write the most depressing thing I can think of. So I did. And you read my last book, so you can understand that this one's going to be worse.
Time for the popcorn, folks. It's going to get interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. But with going back to Julian real quick, does Hillary have him killed in jail?
He's definitely gonna kill himself by a gunshot to the back of the head.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking he gets suicided.
Absolutely. Seth Rich, Vince Foster.
Right. Definitely. That 100%. Real quick on Vince Foster. Ken Starr. Ken Starr, not the Attorney General. Ken Starr recently came out and said Hillary Clinton definitely led to Ken Starr's suicide.
Oh, that's because Ken Starr announced that Hillary Clinton definitely contributed to Vince Foster's suicide because she berated him.
Right.
She was like, he's just a no good country doctor and he's the reason for all of our misfortunes.
Right. And I don't think it was a suicide. I am willing to bet that was 100% murder.
No one kills themselves by shooting themselves in the back of the head.
No, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
As a person who has toyed with that idea in my past during my addiction
back
phases,
of the head's never been been a solution.
No, it's
I can't stretch that far anymore.
It's awkward. And Vince Foster was older than I am now. Like can't do that.
No. Once you're past 25, your life goes down.
That's just not even close to accurate. When I hit 30, my life improved exponentially.
You don't look a day over heroin. I've always wanted to use that somewhere.
I'm not 100% sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
And that's where we're wrapping up, folks.
Jesus Christ. So, yeah. Can you, where can people hear the Remso Martinez Experience? Where can they buy Stay Away from the Libertarians? Where can they find you? Where can they see all of the Remso?
Make it totally easy for you. rwmartinez.com. That's rwmartinez.com. Catch the show, catch the blogs, catch all my social media, and pick up a copy of Stay Away from the Libertarians while you can. My new book, How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship, coming out June 2020.
And if you love this show, which I'm certain you did, make sure that you tune into us on the social medias, which you can find us at facebook.com/Muddied Waters of Freedom. You can find us on Twitter at @Muddied_Waters. You can find us on the Instagram at Muddied Waters of Freedom. And you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Muddied Waters Media. You can find this and every other episode at muddiedwatersofreedom.com. Make sure that you tune in tomorrow for Jason Lyon's show, Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, who is closing out the week for us. Then we're taking 2 days off, and Jason Lyons comes back on Monday to open up the week for us with another episode of Mr. America, the Bearded Truth. On Tuesday, we've got a brand new episode of, the show that I always do.
The Thing.
Yeah, The Thing. Muddied Waters of Freedom. The main one, Muddied Waters of Freedom. And next Wednesday, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, hopefully, fingers crossed, Spike's back is better enough to do My Fellow Americans, but we will find out. And then next Thursday, brand new episode of the Writer's Block here. Hang out for a minute while I do the old closing music, and we'll talk afterwards. Cool.
Do it.
Beautiful. To everybody else, have yourselves a great weekend. Make sure you tune in to Jason's show tomorrow, and just, get to writing, because it's an addiction.
This fucking song. I hate this song so much, but I can't let it go.
Get on with it. Fucking get on with it.
I am swinging from a 7-story window, throwing parties in a 10-by-7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, 'cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till the liver turns blue. Sha-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, la, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. La, 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 singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help.